And good morning, everybody. This is another episode of All Things 3D. Today's episode, another week in review. Today is December 19th, 2014. We've got Christmas coming up right around the corner. And, and I'm your co-host, Chris.
Hi, and I'm Mike. Like my car behind me, I haven't gotten it painted yet, but I brought in Javis today to kind of help me out with this. I'm really looking forward to driving it soon. Let me see if I can. But yes, we have a special guest today. Our guest crasher is Javis Davis. That sounded pretty good. Javis Davis. That's a movie star.
It's actually Javis Jones. Javis like Davis. Yeah.
But Javis Jones. Okay.
Right on.
See, you shouldn't leave me with names. I'll just butcher them to hell.
That's totally cool.
Joining us today, and he doesn't have a webcam, but he doesn't need one because he's going to give us some guidance on using 3D Coat. And later on, we'll talk about the specials that the company behind 3D Coat is offering. So if you're still sitting on the fence, now may be the time to get it. Between the 19th, which is today, and the 31st, they've got a great special, and I'll talk about that later. But back to Chris and his first news item.
All right, my first news item. We are going to talk about, so we've been following the printer on the space station now for a few months, and yeah, it looks like they emailed a wrench, a spanner wrench, that Barry Wilmore asked for. Astronaut aboard the Internet Space Station. International Space Station. They apparently emailed him this spanner wrench, and they printed it out successfully, and now he's got the tool that he wants. Pretty fun. I just thought that was just super cool.
Super cool. Why don't you magnify your screen a little bit, and we can see it about 150.
There we are.
That's the tool there, huh?
That's the tool.
Very cool. And it actually works?
And it works. And look at that smile. You can tell that genuine smile on his face. He's like, I can make whatever I want. I just have those NASA engineers email me what I want, and they send it right up.
I can't point to it, but notice what he's wearing around his left wrist.
Oh, yeah, anti-static bracelet. You definitely don't want to have static discharge
around our ESD sensitive stuff. Well, that's pretty cool. Well, thank you, Chris. Well, I'm going to move on to my story, which, you may have already heard about it. Get your hankies out, because this one's going to be a tearjerker.
I love this one.
The key is that with 3D printing, we're able to do a lot of things, but to see this in actual functionality, workability, and plus the dog is obviously cute. I'm a little partial for some reason, but I didn't realize it till last night. I've been so busy I didn't get a chance to watch it, and I'm thinking, man, was I dumb. My sister actually sent it to me saying, I think you might want to watch this. But I had seen it on or heard about it on a podcast as well. But yes, it is. It's Derby the dog. If you haven't seen it, or if you have seen it again, you're going to get to watch it one more time. And here we go. Can you hear that?
No, but
okay.
I can see it.
That's okay. We can.
Poor little guy. I don't know what kind of condition he suffered.
Yeah, I don't know either.
His arms are all bent like that. I've never seen a dog with arms all bent like that.
Well, I mean, it's probably a congenital disease, just like we have in human beings. So.
Yeah, if I remember right, it's kind of like MS. I remember reading about that a little bit.
Okay. That makes sense.
So then they made these little prosthetics.
That is cool.
I like their little design too. This is like the extended version.
Now, what's interesting, this is kind of a promo for 3D systems, which I guess if there's a negative behind this. But regardless, if you've got the talent, you've got the tools, it makes a lot of sense to be able to use what you can. Gee, I'm one to talk, right? Ask my wife.
I love it. He's like, look at how happy he is.
Here we go. We should be able to hear some sound now.
He runs with Sherry and myself.
Can you hear that?
Yeah,
every
yeah.
day, at least 2 to 3 miles. He runs faster than both of us. Never really
So one of the
weighed
questions
I love it. I
in
love
the
it.
forums and the comments on this particular video is, why did they make them so short? And they said this was just a prototype and initial phase, and they want to extend it maybe in the future. But obviously, Derby doesn't mind. So
It's
again,
very
it's a 3D system. And you know, 3D system has been kind of doing this lately, and to show off, not necessarily, well, I guess the human element, but they're really trying to show how these particular 3D printers, product scanners can be utilized in a day-to-day fashion. And I really give them hats off. As you know, they've kind of taken a beating in the stock market. So hopefully this will give them some more attention and move the whole 3D industry forward. All right, Chris, next item for you.
Next item from me. I got feedback going, Mike.
Okay, hang on a second. All right, we should be good now.
All right. So this one was pretty cool. Obviously, not a lot of details, but the world's first Nano 3D printer developed by the KERI team. This was out of Korea. They apparently have a 3D nano printing technology that will make it possible to produce 3D objects using various materials, including metals, plastic, and graphene, compared to existing 3D printers that only use plastic as the material. So they are claiming that they have a graphene type printer, a nano printer that can print nano materials, and the company's name is KERI, and they're from Korea. So we'll be following that. Just interesting.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, when we say nano, what are we talking from nano? How large? What's the size of the objects it looks like? You know, we did have that with Jaunty from England, who had designed some things and sent them off to, I think it was Germany, to get printed on, I guess, on the nano level. So are we looking at something in that nature, or?
Yeah, you know, it says it doesn't really mention any size. It just mentions that it's going to be using an injection nozzle, and I don't necessarily know if the nano material is referring to the small, how large the feature size is. I think it more refers to well, I'm making an assumption here that it's referring to the structure that it's laying down itself. So when you print graphene, the material itself is a nanostructure, right? So it may, I don't know necessarily if it's referring to the features of the print, but like I said, I'll be following up on this, and we definitely will stay on top of it.
Well, okay, I appreciate it, Chris. And so I'll go on to my next item. I guess mine are all going to be somewhat touchy-feely, but for some reason, I just thought this was cool. And that is this luminescent mask. You know, we've seen the 3D printed, but somebody has taken it a little bit further. I guess Adafruit has I don't know what you would call it, but a luminous type wiring that you can wire up. And I guess this person took this printed mask here and then put the luminous material in behind it, and we have this. How cool is that? I don't know. And I know that you've got your mask, so I was thinking maybe we should do something like that. Don't know. Kind of neat. And, we have scanned each other, or I've scanned us, and maybe we could do something like that. Just
That's really cool.
isn't that neat?
Yeah, it's like what do they call that? The Veroni structure. I've been looking online. They have some tutorials on how to create kind of that effect from an STL.
The luminescence or the
kind of that
the
geometric pattern. Yeah.
Okay.
So you can you can actually take your STL file, that's the triangulated faces, and you can basically use those as like stroked lines, and there's algorithms you can run the STL through, and it will actually produce a Veroni-like structure.
Okay.
I think it's Veroni.
And again, this is from 3dprinting.com, or I'm sorry, 3dprint.com, and the writer is Eddie Krasentine. These guys are great. They've got all kinds of interesting articles. So back to you for your third and last item, Chris.
All right, this next one is from E3D, who is famous for their E3D hot end. They have released a new Volcano hot end, and they are claiming it's faster, stronger, and can print bigger. So because it allows you to print so much faster and print parts stronger. I don't really understand too much how. Here's a demo. Here's the demo video of the actual Volcano printer versus their standard E3D hot end, and I'm not really. I guess it just allows for a higher flow rate. But I don't really understand the difference between hot ends so much quite yet, because I haven't got my hands on one.
Well, is the nozzle wider? Yes. See, it's 0.6, 0.81, and 1.2. So you're actually feeding more plastic.
Yeah, but they in the comparison before, they were comparing it, I think, apples to apples. So like a.
Well, it's showing right now 0.6 and 0.8. So.
Right. So maybe it's just for kind of coarser prints.
Yeah.
Not sure here.
Well, too bad I have one more item. I would segue into a material that I think will help compensate for the ridges that you see that are, what would you call, ubiquitous, or there's I can't even say. I won't even say it. But essentially, as most of us know, FDM, especially at this level, does have ridges, and I'm going to be bringing up a product that will help reduce that. And may make the model stronger as well. Very cool, Chris. It's funny, as you probably know, I've got a J head just sitting around on a 3mm that I had bought a long time ago, and just got a new extruder for an all-metal extruder for my Maker Gear M2. But I will have to ask you to print a part for me. So.
Awesome.
Okay, on to the last item. Some of you may be familiar with these guys. Marvel, if you've ever done any Windows installations, you'll find that a lot of the chipsets that come with a lot of the PC boards or on your laptop are made by Marvel. And they make a lot of, what would you call it? Not necessarily microprocessors, but in this case it's a microprocessor board. But currently what they're making is or coming out soon, is an all-in-one SoC, which is system on a chip that has the entire 3D printer functionality. And it says that the actual chip itself is going to be based on, I think, on an ARM7 design, and but it will also contain all the drivers necessary to run your servo motors and everything else. I would assume that this doesn't actually incorporate the drivers themselves, because they normally need to be heat sunk, but I'm assuming the control signals and everything else will be supplied by it. So very neat action. ARM version 7, 533 megahertz, which is pretty good. There's a printer that I want to talk about a little bit later that for whatever reason, I didn't realize it, but it has an ARM version 9, I think, and it actually runs it faster. But I'll talk about it in a little bit. But here's some of the settings. They're also well known for their networking functionality. So it will have contained within the chip Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And so if you want to go out there, they do have an evaluation development board that you can sign up for, and I don't know what the cost is. And as it indicates here, they're going to be at the Venetian at CES. So if you want to go by and take a look at it. But it'll be very interesting. I don't know what the underlying protocol, obviously it's going to be ARM-based, so I don't know what will run on it. As we're aware of, most of the printers we use are Arduino-based, so I don't know if that's the case here. So we'll see.
Yeah, very interesting.
Okay, well that kind of sums up the news for today. If you have anything else that you want us to talk about, why don't you go ahead and write in. It gets kind of lonely out here, just Chris and I. Maybe not. But if you got something to mention to us. But on that note, I would like to introduce Javis.
Yes,
Javis, are you there?
I'm here.
Boy, you're standing pretty still there. I saw this. What is that, the jacket that you're wearing there, if you don't mind me asking?
The jacket is, I think it's just a Dickies, actually, but I sewed on the MIA POW patch, and on my right shoulder I actually have my unit patch from the Army.
So I'm going to go ahead and bring up your portfolio, and I think the problem is that your portfolio doesn't, for some reason, switch past the soccer ball there, or if you're international, the football, or in German, the Fußball.
Yeah, das Fußball.
Das Fußball. But I can't get past this one. So let's see, I'll just maybe go back to your portfolio and just show the smaller images.
Yeah, I think the front page you have to manually cycle through with the arrows or the arrow keys on your keyboard.
Yeah, I tried that and it didn't work.
Oh, it didn't work, huh?
Yeah.
That sucks, sorry.
No, that's okay. Well, we got the little ones here. So it looks like you've got some very interesting hyper-realistic images.
Well, thanks.
So, yeah, I thought they were really cool. Dennis gave me your name or said, the person you need to have on your show is Javis, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't know who Javis is. Does he work for, what's the company behind 3D Coat? Pilway or?
Pilgway, yeah.
Pilgway. And so they gave me your name. So really, other than seeing your portfolio and assuming that you really know how to use 3D Coat, I don't know anything about you. So maybe you can tell us a little about yourself, Javis.
Sure. I'm mostly just a freelance artist. I do some contract work for Pilgway. They make 3D Coat, of course. And I've helped them design the layout a little bit. I've also helped design some of the tools, more specifically the UV tools. But otherwise, I use it mostly for sculpting, texture painting, some UV mapping, things like that. And most of my work, funny enough, is it's done in a modeling tool called Modo, and it's also a render
very familiar with that.
Yeah, so I use Modo for most of my pipeline stuff, but when it comes to texture painting and sculpting, I use 3D Coat.
Okay, and I found that it's exceptional. Would you agree with me that for the money, you really can't beat the product?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. There's no other tool for that price point that can do exactly what 3D Coat can do. It's kind of amazing, really. I mean, the only competing tool out there that can do very similar things is more than twice the price.
And what product is that?
Well, for the texture painting, we've got Mari, and I mean, they're both very different products, but comparison-wise, I mean, you get very similar tool sets, but the price is drastically different. And then on the sculpting side, you got ZBrush, and they're both very, very similar sculpting-wise, but again, the price point is just, there's no real comparison. My opinion, of course.
Well, and I use it, gosh, almost a year now, and I've used it for several things. You mentioned that you use Moto for, I'm assuming, your sculpting and so forth, but I found the tools within 3D Coat also very usable in that area. And,
Definitely, yeah.
for the
Yeah,
cost, and to let our audience know, if I remember correctly, you can get an educational Steam version, or as they say, the out of work version for, I think, was it $99 or $95? And
yeah, I
then
believe it's generally about $95 for the Steam or indie version, whatever they're calling it now. But it is on sale, like you were mentioning. I think that's $74 for that one right now.
okay, well, I did not know it was 74. They had run it at that price before, but you can pick it
Yeah.
up either on their website, which we'll go to later, or you can go to the Steam if you're a Steam user for games and so forth. It's in their store. But they also have a Pro version, and the Pro version really doesn't offer that much more other than larger textures, from 2K textures, 2 by 2, to 4K, or is it even up to 8K? I think it's up to 8K by 8K.
Yeah, you can do up
So,
to 16K textures. with the
okay,
Pro.
sorry, 16K.
Yeah. That's relatively new for the 16K.
Okay. And what else do you get for that Pro price? And that Pro price, if I remember, is $395.
I think it's 374, 375,
Okay.
if I
And
recall
then,
correctly.
as mentioned, that is also on sale from the 19th to the 31st for $100 off. So you can get the Pro version for $295, and if you're like me who bought the Steam or the poor man's version, you can upgrade. Normally you can upgrade for $100 off the normal price. Now it's $200 off the normal price. It's like, uh, gosh, like 180 or something. So it's very, very reasonable
Yeah.
to jump aboard and get the Pro version. And I've already found myself on more than one occasion wanting to go to 4K textures and have had a bottleneck. So now is my opportunity to take advantage of that sale.
Yeah, I think the other feature for the Pro version compared to the indie Steam version is that you can have multiple paint layers, whereas the I'm just gonna call it the indie version, you can only have up to 7 paint layers.
Yeah, I mean, if you're just starting out, that's more than adequate. I
Oh,
haven't even
absolutely.
exceeded that
Yeah.
yet. But yeah, it is nice. And hopefully, Javis, that you're going to go ahead and bring up your screen
Yeah.
for 3D Coat.
Let me do this here. One
Kind of
sec.
run us from starting with something new, maybe importing something, or maybe starting from scratch. But the first thing that you notice is that you have options in what you can bring in. So maybe if you could go through really quickly, and because it basically will provide you an overall view of what 3D Coat can do for you. So if you don't mind.
Sure. Yeah. So we have 2 different sculpting methods. We've got voxels, which are like a 3D vertex, if you will, that it can have color information, alpha information, volume. It's pretty versatile. It's used in numerous technologies, including games, but here we're using it for sculpting. Then we've got surface sculpting, which is polygons, of course. It's comparable to ZBrush. And I forget the other free sculpting tool that they bought up. Sculptors. This one has dynamic tessellation. It's pretty awesome. I use this one most of the time when I sculpt. Then we have a number
And what
of...
do you mean by dynamic tessellation?
Basically, when you're sculpting, it's using polygons, and if you start to extrude or sculpt something out, instead of getting stretched polygons or elongated, obtuse polygons, you're going to get more polygons in those areas. So
hence the word dynamic. So it's kind of smart. It only gives you more polygons for that area.
Exactly.
Which is great, because I remember in the past you normally had to tessellate your entire object in order to get that detail, which really multiplied the number of polygons. And as you're aware of, the more polygons, the harder your machine has to work. So
yes,
it's an extremely neat feature.
Yeah, so it does that on a local basis, depending on where you're sculpting, your brush size, and really a number of parameters that the user, can specify. It's pretty interesting, actually. It's got a lot of customizability. So some of the other things that I haven't used much are these two right here, the repair scan to mesh and import images mesh. I'm a little familiar with this one, but basically it lets you import a grayscale image and converts it to voxels or polygons if you want, so you can sculpt on it. The scan to mesh,
When you say gray, it uses the gray for depth mapping?
That's correct, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, then you can import scanned meshes. It will let you import point cloud data. I've only done that a couple of times, so I can't speak to exactly how it functions, and the last time I used it was like 2 years ago. So.
Yeah, I think
But,
it's got some hole filling tools that are more prominent. You can also
right.
use the voxel tools, but it gears the, what would you call it, the toolbar more specifically for repairing scans that you may have brought in.
That does seem to be the case, yeah, like the fill holes tool and a number of other things that would help you fix scan data. So then we've got a number of different painting tools here. We've got vertex painting. So what that one lets you do is, say you have a scanned object, like actually what you were working with, what you were showing me last night.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one it seems like you've been using. So with that, you don't need to have UV maps at all. You can just paint on your vertices, but you do need to have a rather high poly count.
What is a UV map? You know,
yeah, a UV map is when you take a polygonal mesh and specify where you want some seams and then unwrap it on a 2D plane so then you can texture paint on it, which is it's really common in movies and games, and pretty much everything really these days uses it.
And what's the advantage versus vertex painting? In fact, I may have interrupted you. Vertex painting,
No, not at all.
you're literally assigning an RGB value and maybe even a depth value to an actual vertex, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, you can assign RGBA. I'm not sure if you can do depth, but if you were to do any kind of depth painting, it would just modify the position of the vertex or vertices. Okay. But you can assign RGBA data to it, absolutely. And what was the question compared to, you wanted UV mapping?
UV mapping is more prominent in the movie and the gaming industry, and as you said, in a lot of things. Why would you choose one over the other?
So when you're using vertex painting, it's, if you just want to prototype something quickly, like I want to paint colors on something just to test and see what it looks like without spending hours UV mapping or however long, depending on the complexity of your mesh, making a UV map and then painting, you can cut out hours worth of work to just do some quick prototype painting with vertex painting. The general downside to that is that you do need to have a high-res mesh compared to a UV mapped object. So with a UV mapped object, you're doing an image-based painting. So the resolution of your image will depend on will dictate the quality of the texture.
Okay, so it's actually independent of the mesh density, whereas in vertex painting, your mesh density relates specifically to the detail of the color resolution.
That's correct, yeah. Yeah, and then, so we've got 3 different image-based painting tools. We've got per pixel, which is, it's really the de facto for 3D coat because the micro vertex is more or less being phased out. But that one you can paint on any resolution of mesh and get pretty decent normal map and displacement maps out of it.
Okay, now that's the PTEX mode?
That one is per pixel.
Okay.
And actually, PTEX is, as far as the way it generates displacement and normal maps, it's exactly the same as per pixel. The difference between those two is that what PTEX will do for you is it will automatically create UV maps for you. And also, the more detail you paint on a local polygon, it will actually increase the size of the polygon on the UV map. And over time, if you keep painting on that polygon, it will actually end up so large that the polygon will get its own UV map.
Huh, interesting. Yeah. So this is all smart and works in the background.
It does, yeah. And the other thing is that you can export to PTEX format for PTEX compliant render engines. Now, I'm not
Right, and that
familiar
was
with.
the other point, is that
Yeah,
this is used by Disney. In fact, I think the standard was created by Disney,
it was.
and there are a few other people. I think Maya imports it, 3D
Yes.
Studio. So any of the bigger systems
Yes.
also work with PTEX.
So is there any way we could get a little demo, maybe?
Yeah, so I don't have too many assets I can show that that are not covered under NDA, but I can show you on. I would prefer to do it on the Preview Cube actually, which I've got loaded up. So you wanted to see something more recent? I believe something from the
Yes.
alpha. Is that correct? Cool.
Right.
Because yeah, we have PBR materials in here now, which are pretty awesome. I don't know if you
Kind
guys
of
are familiar
explain
with.
that really quick. One of the
Yeah.
things that I wanted Javis to do is there is a brand new feature, and he's got a little window down there open on it that allows you to print or use environment textures. And this seems to be the big thing, and it's going to be in Sketchfab, that allows you to literally weather or create very realistic environmental textures on objects to make them, as mentioned, realistic. So go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, no, it's pretty cool. So I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with Dedo. It has a very similar feature set, but so basically what a PBR workflow is a physically based rendering workflow, and there are a number of different types of standards within that workflow. There's glossiness and metalness, roughness and metalness. And there's a whole bunch of different standards. So I guess there's no real standard, but it's kind of bizarre. But in 3D Coat, you can use a number of those different workflows. In fact, you can export out right now to gloss and color specularness, gloss and metalness, roughness and metalness. Those are the three main ones. So anyway, I've got a very simple preview cube. I'm sorry, sphere, not a cube. And
it's a cube with a million facets.
yes, you could say that. So what 3D Coat will do when you first create an image or a material is that it will calculate the cavity. And I'll turn this on here real quick. You can see the edges are white, and the cavities are a little bit darker, but they're kind of hard to see. I don't know if I zoom in. Can you see those dark edges in there?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, so what it will do is when you have a material, for example, if I open the material editor for this one here, and in this little preview box, you can kind of see that those edges are weathered, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the interiors, I don't really have much going on in there, but they're a little darker. And you can actually specify different parameters for those areas. Oh, looks like metalness is not on there. Yeah, so this, for example, this metal material here, if I use the fill tool, I can fill those areas in. Oh, looks like, sorry, let me undo that. Color tolerance was on there. So I can say, hey, I want this thing to be entirely metal, and I want this metal to have worn edges. And I could even say, after I fill this entire thing in here, so I'll go to a different material. I've got these ones that I've just been calling effects. And so say I want to put some rusty edges on this thing, right?
Yeah.
Right, so I'll specify like some rust color here. Let me find a good material for this. Mind you, this is an alpha build, so it doesn't function exactly how you would think at all moments. So it should be an orange color right now, but doesn't appear to be hewing it toward orange. But maybe if I click, no. Oh, actually, let me turn off my cavity map. That'll do it. There we go. Right, so now I can specify some like rusty edges are right in there, right?
Wow.
And that's just a preview, but you can do all sorts of crazy stuff with this very, very quickly.
So let me kind of jump to the end of this a little bit. So for
Sure.
our audience, those people who create tangible objects and let's say wanted to get this printed by somebody in color, I'm
Mhm.
assuming that once you apply these environment or weathering, that you can export this as a UV map textures and then send this off to somebody who prints in color and have all the coloring artifacts that you have here.
Yes, that is correct. You can definitely export out all of these textures and have them printed on your object or printed with your object.
So that'll be really cool because a lot of times people will get a blank object and paint it by hand, do their own weathering. I used to do
Yeah.
that back when I was doing miniatures. But now you can do it all virtually and then send it out to get it printed and have very little work to do when it gets back. So
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, now your Warhammer 40K figures will be all painted for you.
very neat. Okay, Javis, I really appreciate it. I'm hoping to have you back on, and maybe we can do a few more things. But
That
this
would be
is
cool.
my go-to tool, and it's like Photoshop. There's more features buried, and sometimes you can get lost. As Javis kind of, you have to turn this on, turn that on. Oh, wait a minute.
Yeah,
Once your flow. But keep in mind, he's using features that don't exist yet. That's coming out. They didn't give me a date, but very soon. So if you do order this, these features will be available to an already chock full of features. The only thing that I can think that competes in price is Mesh Mixer, but its texture capability is minimal. So
Yeah.
for at this time $75, it really is a good bang for the buck if you're wanting to do organic and color type images or 3D dimensional stuff. So
And
Javis,
for
you're
our
welcome.
for
I'm
our
sorry, go ahead.
listeners that want to find Javis, where can we find you, Javis?
My website is just javisjones.com. That's Javis Jones.com. But I linger on the 3D Coat forums also. That's 3d-coat.com/forums. I also hang out on the Moto forums a lot too, and that's at the Foundry community. Don't recall the exact URL because they just changed it over from the Luxology one. But
Yeah, I should have got involved in Moto back when it was kind of very reasonable, like $300 or $400.
yeah.
Now it's an exotic price, and I'm still waiting for some huge special to come along, but it hasn't. But
I think it's
so great.
40% off right now, actually.
I'm sorry, how much?
Moto is, I believe, 40% off right now on new licenses
Oh, well, that's
for like
very
two more days. Yeah.
Yeah, I've only got so much money.
Oh, I hear you.
All right. So on that note, Javis, do you also do contract work or?
I do. That's my primary focus, actually, is freelance contract 3D stuff mostly.
Great. Well, I appreciate it. So you're welcome to hang on and kind of banter with us on the rest of our show. But thank you again, Javis.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.
All right, Chris, back to you.
Yeah, so we're just, I guess, in our project section of the week. We got to run through it real quick because we're running short on time. And obviously, I'm still working on my gocupi, and I kind of reworked what I was doing. For those of you that don't know, what I'm building is a gocupi. It's called a gocupi. You can find out about it at gocupi.com. That's gocupi.com. And originally I was going to build it onto a piece of melamine, but I figured, why not make it whiteboard compatible? So now I'm building it onto my whiteboard and then having a roll. I'm 3D printing some pieces that I can roll butcher paper down over the whiteboard and clip it, and then so I can put in a pen and it'll either draw on paper or the whiteboard depending on what I want. So that's what I'm working on. I did some work on it yesterday, and I've got pretty much all the components ready to go, and just going to continue to assemble it this week and next.
Anything else that you can tell us a little bit about?
Not much. Just a lot of 3D printing. Been working on. Also been working with a couple open source developers on some open source an open source weather station. So I've been 3D printing the components for them, and the design is from Thingiverse, and you can go check it out. On Thingiverse, just search for an anemometer. There's an anemometer and a wind vane, and essentially they both hook up to either an Arduino or a Raspberry Pi, you put some different components in there, but all the parts are 3D printed, and then you can measure your wind speed and wind direction, tricky stuff like that. Pretty fun.
Very cool.
That
And
is
you'll
cool.
give me the links, and I'll put them in the show notes.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll go on to mine, and as Chris said, I will run through them very quickly. As I have brought up in the past, I have been working. Actually, I don't know if I brought it up in the last show that you weren't present last Friday, but I'll bring it up here. I have created the NEODiMOUNT. I can't even pronounce the name that I made up. NEODiMOUNT. Yeah, mount. And there we go. Well, essentially what it is using rare earth magnets, and it creates a new mounting system for the structure sensor, and I will show it to you. This is the case on the right. So I use 3 of them, placed and distributed. See how quickly that clamped on, so it's not going anywhere. I just got in my new stainless steel thin sheets that fits, if you can look at it on the bottom here, and I 3D printed a new frame for it, and it just slips right in there. You bolt it down. There's actually 4 screws, which you have to use anyway, and like this. I'm going to do like the Microsoft commercial with their Surface tablets. Their first ones, they came out, they had a bunch of people clicking their but man, that's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So I'm stoked about this. This is cool. I'm going to be creating 3 case sizes. Obviously the iPhone 6. That'll have a custom mount on the bottom so that you can use it with the grip and shoot that I talked about before. Also the iPad mini and the iPad Air. So they'll all have that mounting system, and I'll be working with the Graffiti Noodle for those 2, which has a built-in tripod mount. And on to my next item. Well, that's all my projects. I had something else, but I forgot, so I'm not going to talk about it. So on to the products. Guess what came in, Chris?
What came in?
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh,
Nice.
Samsung
VR
VR.
One.
What? You're kidding me. And do you have a
No,
Galaxy?
it's not Samsung. It is
Oh.
the ZEISS ZR ONE. You know, I was looking at the Samsung,
Oh.
which is coming in, but that's $200 and only works with the Note 4. So you have to not only get the $200 glasses, but you also have to get the Note 4, which even on eBay is about $500 to $600. So you're going to spend about $1,000 on that. And that's a little hefty. So I said, what else is out there? But notice what you immediately said. That's the Samsung. No, this is the VR One by 3D. Oh, geez, I've already forgotten the company, but I'll have that in the show notes. And they have ZEISS, and they work. They're like a ZEISS distributor, but they use ZEISS lenses, and I'll get into in a minute. Sadly, they're not glass, but they're plastic. But they're high quality, and I'm going to compare those. Do you remember the Stutzy or the Spective that we had? I remember I asked you to bring it back so I could build it, so that I could show in comparison. But it's really nice. I can't say it. I mean, it's heavy now because I actually put in. It's got this very neat system that allows you to pull out your phone. So it puts it into a plastic mount. And this one is for the iPhone 6, and since I'm using the iPhone 6 for my structure sensor development program, I thought, well, it'd be kind of neat to get the carrier. The sad thing is right now they only have 2 carriers, one for the S5 and one for the iPhone 6, and then they're taking a poll on what people would think that they would need another one. But I suggested to them that they should make this available on Thingiverse or somewhere so that you could download the step or the STL file and modify the interior, because that's all you need to do, to match your phone size. And really, there's not much to it. This is an injected motor, so there's some, what would you call it, spines. You know the right term for that. But and then the carrier portion itself with some locking mechanisms. And you don't even probably have to get that sophisticated, but you probably would just put your own size in there and make your own, and then the rest of it could be 3D printed. It's not that elaborate, and then you could make your own carrier, which I plan to do, and I suggest I'll just probably scan it or take the dimensions and make my own. But I did find out, like I said, this is the iPhone 6. Well, the iPhone 6, even though it's a nice phone, the quality isn't what the newer phones are. But my S4, which is a 1080p, which I have here, kind of funny. I can just kind of slide it right in by itself and not even need it. So I have to hold my fingers in there, but I could just put some little rubber mounts on the sides of it, and it works great. So the neat thing about this, and let's see if you can see it, look at the lenses. Those lenses are larger than what you have on the Oculus Rift, and then if you look at the lenses on the Stutzy, they're larger.
Wow.
Did you see this one? This guy has one of the new Samsung VRs without the. This is without the Galaxy.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is that the VR One, you can't take off that plate. I wish you could, but even though it looks opaque, it's actually transparent in sections, so you can use this, and they have an application for projected imagery, or what's the term for it, where you have a video image of your surroundings and then you put 3D objects in it. Shoot, can't think of the word for it. Augmented. So you can do augmented reality, and they have a little software piece to do that, which is kind of neat. Actually, you can see that it's kind of transparent. You see that in there?
Yeah.
So even though it looks opaque, it's actually transparent inside. It's fairly comfortable. It's actually got some soft foam on it. I really like it. But, you know, again, the only thing that I don't like about it, and I guess I've been spoiled because I've worked with another stereoscopic viewer that uses all glass lenses, and also I just realized that the Stutzy Spective also uses all glass. And why do you want to use that? Because you have less chromatic aberrations. If you've noticed, if you use the Rift, the edges of your peripheral vision seems to kind of act like a rainbow. You split out the color. You get color fringing like red and blue. Well, that's a problem with plastic lenses. If you used a glass lens, that kind of goes away, and you can really see the difference between the two products I have here. In saying that, though, I don't see why you wouldn't be able to change these out for glass. Now, they mentioned to me if they had gone with all glass, it would have added about $1,000 to the cost. I don't really agree with that. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to wear glass lenses on their head. But, you know, they are larger. It does provide you a better peripheral view than some of the other things, so I think it's a very cool product, and I recommend it. So, and the other thing is, it's not cheap, but it's about half the price of the Samsung unit, and it also works with iOS devices. So if you've got an iPhone 6, it's really the only game in town. So my other products, it's kind of cool, and I'll very quickly, you know, I've been using little Windows tablets to control different printers, and the problem with most of them is that they cannot supply power separate. So if you use the USB, most of them have a USB external control, or USB connector, and you can hook up other things like your printer to it and then drive it from it. The nice thing is like an 8-inch screen, so it makes it like a full controller board in a very compact package. The problem is the one that I was using before, which also supplied an HDMI output, did not have the ability to power it while you were using the USB port. I found this baby. It's a WinBook. I found it, and I had Steve Hernandez send it to me because he was near Micro Center. Sad thing is, you can only get this at Micro Center. It's a WinBook. It right now is on sale for $139. It's just like the Acer we talked about before. It's very zippy. It's 32-bit, not 64, but his software works on it as well as most of the slicers out there. Pretty neat little product for $139 to drive your stuff. And because it's a Windows product, you know, you could, if you wanted to, add a program to control it remotely if you wanted to. So it could be a glorified print controller as well. And most importantly, you can charge it and still have a USB port. In this case, it is a full-size USB port. So you don't have to use converters, don't have to use an OTG cable. All by itself, you can do everything. And again, it has an HDMI port. So in the case of what we're going to be using for Monday is the little RP, which we'll get into a little bit. And then finally, it's in the notes, but and I kind of skip it, but there's an advanced material that I was telling Chris earlier that's an epoxy-based stuff that you can paint onto your FFM or FDM or FFF printer, we talked about the ridging. Well, this will fill that in, and because it's epoxy based, it will actually strengthen your model. And I've got
Reynolds
some
has been
coming.
selling something like that. Reynolds
That's
AM.
yep, that's what I bought. So
3D print coat, they call it.
So
3D
over the
coat.
holiday, yeah, it's called 3D coat. And I had some that will be coming in probably a little bit later next week, and I will be trying it out. It showed it on something that was orange, but it actually is a clear, so then you can paint it or do anything you want with
XTC 3D is what it's called.
Yep. So
High performance 3D. Yeah.
Do you have the link up?
Yeah, it's on Reynolds AM.
I'll switch to you and then.
Reynolds AM, Advanced Materials. It's down here. The first thing that comes up here. This is it here.
So I've got a little video you can watch. It looks like I've been working with epoxy a lot for adhering objects together. It works very similar to that. You mix two components together, and then you literally brush it on, and it provides a very strong surface coat that you can paint, sand, or do anything with. So if you're like me and you want a little bit better quality, or you want to strengthen your prints, this is the stuff to go with. The pricing is decent, but the shipping is almost the same cost, so be aware of that. If you live near them, might be able to just pick some up, or if you've got a friend. All right, well, that's all my products of the week, so let's go right into the Print Whisperer's tip.
The Print Whisperer has been having a lot of fun on GitHub lately. I spend quite a bit of time on GitHub, which is the world's largest code repository, public code repository. They are out of the Bay Area. I actually have a buddy, a good friend of mine, he works there. And there's a lot of open source projects, obviously, on there. Almost all of the ones I really love, they are up on GitHub, and you can see their latest code developments. So, here's Steve Hernandez's under GitHub. The project is really Creation Workshop, but under GitHub he calls it UV DLP Slicer Controller, and that's kind of its code name on GitHub. He keeps a version up here, a build that's even more up to date than what's publicly released. So it might have bugs in it. But one of my favorite things to do lately, as of late, is I go on this website called ChangeTip. And what you do is you register for an account, you get a little online wallet, and you log into your ChangeTip account, and you put maybe $20 or $30 worth of Bitcoin into a wallet, and then you can go into GitHub or Reddit, or they're compatible with a few other websites, even Twitter, and you can actually twit tips to people. You can twit Bitcoin. You can essentially donate Bitcoin or tip them Bitcoin just through a tweet. So what I've been doing is going to people's GitHub repository and asking for features that I want to see in their issue queue. So I'll create a new issue, and I'll say, oh, I want it to do a new widget, and then I can say at Steve Hernandez, which he's a Pac-Man fan, is his username, and then I can say I want to buy you a beer. Buy you a beer, and then you just put at ChangeTip. And then if I press submit new issue, it would actually tip him $2.50 worth of Bitcoin. And so what I've found recently is that it's a great way to kind of bribe programmers that are managing projects on GitHub. So like another one I use all the time is Matter Control, which is driving my Lulzbot 3D printer. Really love that piece of software, and it's just getting better and better and better every day. He's on here contributing. This guy Lars, he's the head of Matter Hackers, which is down in the Costa Mesa area. And so I've just been having a blast just going on there and kind of bribing these programmers to implement features or fix bugs in the software. And it seems to be a really good way to do it because they get benefit, you get benefit. It's almost like directly paying them, but it's in Bitcoin, so they don't have to invoice you and keep it on the books. It's not this complicated thing for them because a lot of times
What
programmers
was
don't want to
that?
do.
Under the table?
It's not under the table. It's Bitcoin. It's a cryptocurrency. It's not
I
managed by
know
the
it
central
is.
banks. It's our
Um,
yeah.
so, are they actually implementing some of your features due to this?
Yeah. So I'll ask for you know, certain bugs that I've seen in matter control, and Lars has addressed them and you know, picked up on them, or I'll at least get an email where he'll email me thanking me, and then it opens up a channel of communication. You can and then you have basically direct contact with the software engineer.
Very, very cool.
Yeah, so that's my little tip of the week.
Okay, well, I'll jump back to myself real quick. And essentially, in previous episodes, we talked about the Form 1 coming out with some new materials. Well, they just released a couple of days ago that they are selling the flexible resin. So if you're interested, have a Form 1 that is now available, or it may be a reason to get a Form 1. The next one is we already talked about. Pilgway is offering $100 off of either the full Pro version, or if you bought the previous version and want to upgrade, it is also $100 off. And then, as Javis alluded to, you can even get the poor man's version, no, the indie version, which was normally $95 for. You still there, Javis? 75?
Yeah, it's I think $74.
74.
Yeah.
So good price. Look into that. And as mentioned in previous, I signed up for the Ember program for Autodesk. Sadly, I can't afford that printer. But if I wanted to get one, I could. But I don't have, what is it, close to $6,000 for it. Looks really nice, but sadly I can't afford it. But on that, there really isn't anything else for the rest of the year, so I won't bring up any upcoming fairs or events. There's one big one at the beginning of January, and that is the International CES. And still debating if I'm going to be going or not. Chris, you kind of thought that you might be going. If that's the case, maybe we can interview some people. If not, we'll see if we can get somebody on. I think a little bit later, the CEO of Autodesk is going to be on, and we're going to be interviewing him. And also the CEO of MakerBot is going to be on around that same time frame. She will be on, and she will talk to us about their upcoming things for next year. So that'll be really cool. 2 episodes in the can. We did an interview with Brooks Myers yesterday, which was really interesting. Was it yesterday or the day before? Yes, yesterday. And that was really interesting. There's going to be another mobile 3D scanner on the market sometime in 2015. So if you're interested in it, listen to that one. And then we had our roundtable discussion on Monday with some local surveyors as well as a aerial stereo photographer or aerial mapping that uses photogrammetry. That was really interesting, and he had some very interesting ideas and progress on a prototype that right now is under wraps, and hopefully at the FAA is somewhat more pliable in the future. You may see it, but you'll have to listen to our episode to find out more about that. But I will say it's going to be pretty cool. So on that note, Chris, can you kind of wrap it up for us, and we'll say goodbye. And I want to ask, Chris, do you think we should do one next week? We've got our Monday coming up. Oh, I should have mentioned that. We've got something really great that's going to happen on Monday, and that is we're going to be looking at, or actually taking 2 printers out of the box. Well, maybe only 1 out of the box. I'll put the little RP back in the box and pretend like it's being, but we're going to take it from a stage of never being used into a stage of functioning. We're also going to take another FFF or FDM printer from the same situation, from out of the box to printing. And we've got Clayton joining us again, or somebody from the Simplify 3D to use their software to actually print with. I don't know exactly which model printer. I'm hoping to get one of the lower cost models out there that can benefit from a decent slicer. And with our SLA episode, we're going to be looking at the little RP, and we're going to have Brad Hill, the designer, and the man behind the little RP, as well as Steve Hernandez, which you just mentioned, as well as I did, to talk about his software, and we'll be using his software to actually print something. So that starts at 1 o'clock to 2:30 for the FDM section, and then 2:30 till 4 o'clock will be the SLA section. And I am really looking forward to that because, other than our print whisperer, we've got a ton of other experts on there to kind of give us a hand in making sure that we've got this set up and working properly. So looking forward again. Again, it starts at 1 p.m. Pacific Standard Time on Monday. So if you want to, please join us. We'd love to have you. And I guess that's about it. I've run my mouth enough. Chris?
Well, thanks to all our listeners. Thanks, Javis, so much for joining us on our show, and we will see you next week on another episode of All Things 3D.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.